Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future in Review podcast. I'm here today with a familiar guest, Future in Review Chair Mark Anderson. He's also the CEO of Strategic News Service and the CEO of Pattern Computer. Mark, you have a very good predictions record. I'm going to put this mildly. Yep. You predicted the 2008 financial collapse, the oil price collapse, and last year you predicted that the U.S. economy would stay stable while the VC world was panicking about a potential collapse and a major crash.
And the Wall Street Journal world. Yes, that's right.
So I'm saying this up front. We've talked about your record before, but you have a very strong record of success, especially in the economic space. And I'm saying this because you wrote a global report to our members, and it landed in their inbox and it had a particular urgency to it. It was titled The April 20th Wake-Up Call, Currencies, Inflation, and Interest Rates Flash a Red Correlation Signal. So
April 29.
Sorry. And what that was about was kind of your research on the yen-dollar ratio.
Yes.
During which time you found something particularly perhaps alarming about the global economy that you were referring to in this case as this red correlation signal. What was that?
So as you mentioned, I've been looking at the yen-dollar ratio for a variety of reasons since 95. And it is an amazing thing that you can achieve a high prediction rate on where it's going to be in the future. This is the ratio of how many yen are purchased by $1. Mm-hmm. If all you did was watch, because the Japanese Bank of Japan, the Japanese central bank, it turns out only wants three things, three levels. That's it. And if it's not in one of those three places, they're moving hard to make it go there. And so once you recognize that pattern,
three fixed rates of currency ratios is what you're saying.
Correct. It's the ultimate currency manipulation history. Be a great Harvard textbook case, Harvard Business Review would love to do this. So the numbers are 105 to 110, mm-hmm. or 125, or 148.
Okay.
That's it.
And what do each of those levels represent? Are they specific? Can you walk us through the purpose of each level?
It's like, what is the recipe for Coke? The Japanese have not told us the answer to that question, mm-hmm. but we know from their actions that these are true.
Okay. And
they will spend hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of yen to interfere with the marketplace, intervene to get there from wherever they are at the moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If they're down, they got down as low as the 70s. They had to push it right back up to 105. If they're at 120, they're going to go to 125. Or if they're at 130, they're going to come back to 125. If they're at 140, they're going to go up to 148. So once you know that, it really simplifies your understanding of where they should be. And it conversely turns their entire yen-dollar ratio operation into a sensor, a leading indicator for what they think about what's happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
On April 29th, it went to 130, 140, 150, 160. First time in 35 years. And that's like forever. So what the heck happened? And that's what began the little detective story we're going to talk about today in terms of who cares and why. That when that red flag showed up at 160, mm-hmm. that's not part of any story I'm telling you, Berit. And that's not part of any recent history in Japan. And so that was a red flag.
All right. So you knew something was kind of amiss or out of the ordinary in this case. What is your takeaway about based on the research that you've done, and we'll come back to the specific kind of indicators within that research, but what did that tell you at the end of your research about what's going on?
Oh, you want the punchline?
Yeah.
The big punchline?
I want the high level punchline. And then I want to talk about, after that, I want to talk about how you got to there.
So when you look at that ratio, what you're really looking at is the global flow of money as a proxy, mm-hmm. the flow of money around the planet. And if there's something that's weird or bad or strange or first ever, we call it patterns made, patterns broken. When there's a pattern broken like that, that indicates something's wrong with the flow of money. Why is that happening? What's new and different? There's something very strange going on. You better figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we tried to do in the global report. And the ending of this was that, having looked at a number of major areas around the question of what drives the world economy, a lot of charts in that global report, we discovered that something, in fact, had happened. And what it was China had gone from being a net exporter all their lives to having this rocket-like change in March from a prior rate of export to a new rate of exports that was off the charts. It was almost vertical. And that began in March and continued on through April, and that my deduction, at least, was that this is what had driven the yen into a cheaper landscape that they'd never been in before. And the result of that was, as you know, the whole world is now, including yesterday with our new tariff rates against China, the whole world is now responding to this, what Janet Yellen called oversupply. Mm-hmm. I believe that's a misnomer for aggressive economic attack in major technical industries against the rest of the world.
So this Japanese yen anomaly was a direct response to Chinese oversupply of goods, is what you're saying.
That's my conclusion. Because exporters, so Japan and China compete as world exporters. They both are, their whole model is based on export. True for South Korea, true for Germany, but very true for China, very true for Japan. And so the cheaper your currency is, the more you're helping your export industries do that.
Right.
The cheaper it is to buy if you're Germany buying Chinese goods or buying Japanese goods. So there's a race to the bottom in valuing or manipulating your currencies to compete for export orders.
Status. Yeah.
Yes. That's right.
And what did that tell you about? So yes, just yesterday, we were just talking about this before the podcast, the U.S. imposed major tariffs on Chinese goods, specifically kind of key strategic goods, EVs,
yes,
steel, chips.
We put 100% on EVs from China, essentially shutting the door. We put, I don't remember all the numbers, we put 50% on most of the other goods, 25% on some of them, and they included chips. I think that went to 50. I should be careful here. But 25 or 50 against chips, batteries, solar panels, related green, renewable energy goods, and 2 or 3 other categories. So the really big drivers, technical drivers of the world economy were all included.
And as we have written in the Global Report before, and specifically Evan Anderson has written in his very long series on disengagement from Chinese economic warfare strategies, that is a good thing from our perspective.
It's a moment of celebration, beginning with our discovery of the new Chinese model in 2003, sharing this with all of the executive governmental functions and intel functions around the Five Eyes and the West secretly, and then seeing change occur together with our corporate members of Invent IP who helped, who are the big tech companies in SNS. All of that happening quietly and effectively and moving out into the public media and then being evangelized for many years until now we have this being a two-party agreement, presidential executive agreement, Congress and executive branch agreement, and the kind of level of response that we asked for in the very, very beginning, based on our discovery when we were the only ones who knew what that model was like. And we know we were the only ones because we were briefing the CIA and the FBI and NSA and U.S. Trade. So we made the discovery, and here we're celebrating yesterday that we finally have gotten to the point where there's a really effective action by America, United States. We hope that other Western countries will follow suit because everyone will prosper doing that.
Do you think that these new tariffs will work? What impact do you anticipate them having specifically?
Complete. In other words, they're not a 3% increase or a 5% increase. What they really are within the ability of the executive branch of the United States government, without congressional approval, which might take longer. I don't think they would deny doing it. And so we have in one step from the executive branch large enough increases that essentially we're shutting the door to these China-made copies of American technology or of Western technology sold at up to 90% discounts. So it's crazy stuff.
So this is effectively making Chinese goods uncompetitive with U.S. goods within the United States.
That's right. That's right.
And if you are a company operating in this space, like if you are a tech company in the United States or in Europe, what does this mean for you?
Well, there's two ways to answer that question. Our biggest, we call them inventing nations, but inventing nations' largest enemy in the fight for continued freedom to operate have been the international companies, Boeing, Apple, other top tech giants tend to lobby for China purely for financial reasons of their own. I would call it extortion. China forces them to do it. And those people who show up, at the click of Xi Jinping's fingers for any conference he wants them to show up for in Beijing are lobbying at the same time in the White House so that we won't do anything to make Boeing or make Beijing uncomfortable. So that was our biggest stumbling block, really, in getting to this thing. The benefits to the same companies could be gigantic, but they are under extortionate control by China. So in the near term, it's too much pain for them. In the long term, or even the middle term, I think all tech companies and all industrial sectors benefit by not being extorted and not having their IP ripped out of their companies and copied and sold back against them at half price. Ask Elon, ask anybody, ask Tim Cook. All these people are getting pushed out of China now. They've had a good run. Now it's over. And China's got laws about this. Everyone's going to have to be making, purchases in China from China-only companies, get ready to get kicked out. And they're kind of like pretending that that's not in the room. It is the bright light in the room. So wake up, guys. And the game is over. The party's done. Now you better protect your own people and your own shareholders and your own, lines of business, because you've been sleeping with the enemy, and that's over with. They don't want you anymore. So, in the long term, everyone prospers who's really an inventing country or an inventing company. This is a huge win, a gigantic step forward. And it'd be even better, I'll say it again, if Australia joins with us, which is hard for them to do. If Germany, which is trying to play backwards now, they have to stop that. The German people want what we're talking about. Now, that maybe the top guy in Germany, not so much. He seems to be backpedaling, but stop it. Just play with your people. They understand. They get it. They don't want to be prisoners of China. They know what's going on economically, and you should pay attention to them, Mr. Schultz. That's where we are. And I think that these inventing countries in Europe, they get it, basically. Maybe France is on the edge here. Yeah, let them fly alone. Yeah. Say bye-bye, Francois, Mr. Macron, and everybody else in Europe, sign up.
And when you look at European countries, the ones that most get it, unfortunately, often are the ones who have had direct experience with Russian interference.
For a different reason they get it.
For a different reason, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
so you're referring to the tight alliance, which we call CRINC, between China and Russia and Iran and North Korea.
Yes.
And the more you understand that, and the people in Poland and Estonia,
Estonia,
and not yet.
yeah. No one in those countries is confused about what's happening in the world. It's only
Right.
Germany, France, that seem to feel like they can play both sides.
That's right. And I don't want to say they're smarter than Mr. Macron, but they're smarter than Mr. Macron. Oh, I said it. And they're much smarter and they're more experienced. I would never turn to France for advice on World War II, for example. Got to say it. So, whether it's about NATO or whether it's about an economic NATO, basically, which is what we're talking about now, we need to have that. We need to have the same. Evan published a global report just recently where he talked about an all fronts war, and he's absolutely right. The French need to read SNS. This isn't just about bullets. It isn't just about the economy. It isn't just about misinformation programs. It isn't just about election interference in Canada or here. It's about all of that stuff.
And
and if you're not paying attention,
our conversation this week is focused on the economic aspect of that.
That's right.
I'm curious so given what we know and what you wrote in this report about the BRICS countries, what do you think the potential is for a more widespread reaction from China? Would China and could China have the leverage? I'm talking about to the tariffs. Does China have the leverage to force countries across Africa, South America, Brazil, especially some of its larger trading partners to retaliate towards the U.S. against these tariffs? And if so, what might be the impacts be significant?
If you don't mind, let me reframe your question.
Okay.
If you're a small country, China's been preying upon you already. They've gone around with their Belt and Road worldwide, picking off small island nations and other countries that are small in South America, so on, small economies that need their money, and they're trying to force them to take their money and then get them into indebted slavery, and then build military ports in that country, that kind of thing. So that's well understood. But you could say, from our perspective and from the European perspective, not the African, they're still in the small country world, basically. If China stopped buying our goods, what would effect be on America? Zero. If we stopped buying China's goods, it would be the end of the Chinese business model in one day. That's a big difference. That's binary.
Right.
The same thing is true of Europe. Same exact thing is true of Europe. If China stopped buying, now Europe's a little more owned by Germany, particularly. The three car companies in Germany, which drive Germany, which drives the EU, are kind of extortionately owned now. They're economic captives of China. So if you take those three companies and hive them off and ask, how are you going to do when China kicks you out? It's bad. It's really bad. They're making too much money in China. China has allowed this for that reason. That's how they've captured the EU. Very smart move. But Germany now, the people of Germany understand this, and they no longer trust those companies as much as they used to for a variety of reasons, including the scandal about lying about emissions. So they don't like them the way they used to love them. And I think that we're at a time of change in Germany and in Europe, where if you said the same thing, it would be true. You say, well, look, just look middle term. When they kick you out, where are you? And Germany will suffer the most.
Yeah.
I think. And so, wake up, smell the coffee, and figure it out. Be adults. And I think the EU, Brussels, is already there, which is why Ursula von der Leyen flew to Paris to control the Macron, giving his, lovey-dovey welcome speech to Xi Jinping. And her speech was the opposite. It was like, we are uninterested in your country and what, we're interested. We're uninterested in what your country is doing. Mm-hmm. And we recommend you stop right now. And what she was referring to was this chart that we uncovered of the blast in exports that had been obviously premeditated, pre-planned, and pre-priced to wipe out a lot of economic sectors all at once with no warning.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that blast. We have a few more minutes.
Yeah.
What were the details of that? We've talked about it briefly as this deliberate, planned, pre-priced assault on the global economy to try to undercut all these other companies in other countries. What were the specifics of that you found?
I have yet to do more work on that. This is just our last week's worth of research, where we reviewed everything from aluminum prices in Chile to gasoline and oil prices around the world. But we do know this. We know a couple of things. We know chips are critical. We know that batteries are critical. And we know that the EV, and now we've written about this, I think, uniquely. I don't think anyone else has picked up on this yet. We've been writing about it for about 3 or 4 years. The electric vehicle was picked by the Standing Committee in China as the living enabler for like half of their targets for theft and domination. They want to steal the IP, downprice it, and then dominate global markets. That's the deal. And they've been doing it for 30 years. And when they saw the EV coming along, it contained about half of their 100 items. They have about 100 at a given time. And so chips is part of that. Broadband is part of that. Lightweighted materials, part of that. Networks, broadband networks, and all the stuff that involves the information flow back and forth between all the cars in the world. LiDAR, radar, autonomous source code for driving, which they stole from Elon, and then I think have now distributed to XPeng and all the other players, so that Elon no longer has the leverage of his own work. All that stuff, all these really important things in compute, autonomy, they're all in one box. All you have to do is price that box at $10 a box instead of $1 million. I'm being facetious. $3,000 a car instead of $70,000 a car, and you own all of it. Come back 5 years later, and you own chips, and you own lightweighted gear, you own all the stuff that I just listed. You own all of it with one product. And so very few people get this yet, despite our writing about it. And that's the easy answer to your question, because all these products are contained in one product.
So in the course of 1 week, we have seen both the alert and the U.S.'s response to that alert, or the contents of that alert.
Yes.
Are you, I guess just as a final question, how are you feeling moving forward? Does that make you more optimistic? Because what you wrote to our members was like, warning sign.
Yes.
What is your outlook going forward?
I couldn't be more excited. I couldn't be more optimistic. So, our detective story was driven by the yen dollar change. What we discovered, now, I suspect that what we're talking about here, Berit, is news to the White House in some way or other. But they and many other people have known that, Janet Yellen calls it an oversupply. That's really a misnomer. It's really an economic attack. But all of us have known for many years that China does that. We've known that they were going to do it with renewables. They've warned us, basically, the solar stuff. So we've kind of seen the legs of the elephant. I'm not sure that anyone's seen the elephant, and maybe we're the only ones. So, finding that attack timed to the beginning of March 1, and realizing that the leading indicator was the one we picked, at least for us, and that this is not just, I suspect, what Europe feared or what the White House feared. It's way beyond that. And so this is something actually to be afraid of and to respond to. No doubt, different people in different parts of each government were seeing red lights, red flags flashing. I guess flags don't flash, red lights flashing. But
Mixed metaphors. It's okay.
Yeah, maybe the elephant has 100 legs in this story.
Yeah.
And so, each one was seeing a different leg, but
It's not an elephant, it's a spider.
it's a big spider. It's a
Yeah.
centipede. That's what it is.
Millipede.
A big centipede.
Yeah.
So there's 100 legs. Um, I don't know for sure, but I have not seen anything anywhere in all the writing about what's going on right now that indicated that anyone, including the White House,
Saw the
saw
entire picture.
the whole picture.
Right. Right.
And maybe the service of this podcast will be to help everybody see that.
Yeah, and that these things are not just nuanced and siloed and individual attacks on this
Right.
space over here, or in this
So
cyber attack, or in this, information warfare. But when you put them all together, what you get is this very, very comprehensive, very clear picture of a global, on
yes,
all sides.
I want to go
Globally.
back to your question one more time, Berit, because as we peel the onion on this one economic thing,
Mm-hmm.
right, what will we find? But I think what we're going to find is not just EVs or EVs plus batteries plus chips. I think we're going to find everything. I think that the nation of China under Xi Jinping has had a multi-year plan, which they just launched in public,
Mm-hmm.
which had to do with whether it's the 100 car company, there are 109 car companies all making EVs. Well, that takes years. So what else? And so I think when we peel this apart, we're going to find that this gigantic jump in that chart of exports from China will include hundreds or thousands of products or more.
I just had
And
a
that,
thought that
go
I
ahead.
think could be significant, which is a few years ago, I wrote about China hoarding materials globally.
Yes.
And
Yes, you did.
at the time, I speculated that it might be because they are preparing for a global war.
Yes,
What
yes,
I
you
did
did.
not anticipate at the time was how they might be using those materials. So I was thinking they were hoarding them so that they would have the resources that they needed. But if you're hoarding resources because one other reason you might be hoarding resources is because you need all of those resources in order to master a global economic oversupply of goods.
And let's take it into the currency world again. Why has the government of China been buying record amounts of gold, unbelievable amounts of gold,
Right.
selling U.S. treasuries and buying gold? Why would they do that? Because there's going to be a currency fight.
Right. They're planning to attack US currency.
Selling treasuries is a good start. So anyway, which they had threatened to do before. So if we take what we just did summarized and then back it up to what you were saying, to crink level, that's the other level of play. So we're seeing aggression at that level in all areas of the all fronts war, while we're talking this week about this one area, this economic area of the all fronts war. Both are happening at the same time.
I think the positive takeaway that I have from this conversation is that it does feel like there has been a change in how, like, for some reason, and I know what the reason is, it's money, but the US has been willfully ignorant throughout the last at least 10 years about what's really been going on with China and Russia and the collusion between all those. And now we are starting to see that shift. I think we have reached a little bit of a tipping point about the inability of the US government, given the intensity of attacks that we're seeing increasing, to continue to ignore that. And I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a much more realistic and a much braver perspective about how to react to and respond to a country that is waging an all fronts war against you.
Yes. And another way to phrase what you just said, Berit, would be that they've decided to ignore the lobbying efforts of our top international companies who are captured by China.
And
they've gotten to a point.
Many politicians.
Yeah. Both Congress and, I mean, you can guess how many millions or billions are being spent to bribe people one way or another to change their vote, even though they
Right.
know they should be voting against China.
Right.
So I could name names, but I won't name them here. So yes, it's very important. And the Congress itself and the executive itself have decided that time is over for that lobbying effort to carry any water.
All right.
National security is more important.
You heard it here first. We hope that this will come to pass. And Mark and I will probably be back with another podcast episode in the near future about some other important thing that the rest of the world is overlooking. So thank you,
And
Mark.
we encourage our friends in Australia and Japan and Germany, I won't say France, and in the rest of the EU and in the UK to please consider joining in an a NATO-like economic response to protect your own country's well-being.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Berit.
Thank you.